It is, of course, surprising that he didn't mention his wife in this particular message, since he has a habit of doing so most of the time. So I can understand why that leads us to speculate that things may not be totally rosy in that particular quarter. Um, Having said that, I suspect that he's probably have some sort of celebration at home before he goes off on this jaunt with his friends. But this birthday will obviously, for him, be a time to to look back and to look forward. And although the delight in having children, I think is, that really must have made his whole life worthwhile. I hope in a sense that he will pause for a moment to look at some of the other things that he's said and done, which have been quite damaging, to his relations with his own family. I mean, extremely damaging, in fact, and has therefore isolated him and put him into this very strange position. It's very hard to know what he's thinking. We're all projecting our thoughts onto him, and we can tell him what he ought to be thinking. But I think inevitably, two things really. One, when he was 30, he was unmarried. He hadn't gone along that sort of path of life that some people had. Some people are fathers by the time they're 30. He is now a father, so that's very important to him. I have always thought that she was the more proactive and more sort of outgoing of the two, and that she is the one who has sort of, in a sense, set the agenda, and it's an agenda that he follows. How willingly he follows it, obviously, I don't know. But I would say yes, he does appear to be a plus one, and of course, given the kind of media interest in them, there are always people who can lip read and can see what's being said when they're out in public. And in the recent past, actually, people have been suggesting that she's sort of been giving him messages as to what to do and how to comport himself. And when I, as an outsider, look at the two of them together, I do see a confident Meghan Markle, and I see a rather unhappy Prince Harry. That's what I see. That's all I can tell you. That so I'm projecting like everybody else, what I've deduced. But what was quite interesting was that I'm afraid I live in a certain amount of chaos, and I found a photograph lying on the floor in a Hello magazine, and Prince Harry looking incredibly happy and smiling. And I thought, hang on a minute, this isn't the Prince Harry that I recognise at the moment. When I looked at the date of this magazine, it was 2015, i.e., pre Meghan Markle. I do think his life has been more shaped by Meghan than by himself. And I think we've all read reports that, to some extent, she has isolated him from his earlier friends. And of course, I think that there's been always a problem here, because some of his friends, and we assume also possibly Prince William, raised various sort of anxieties about him getting married, or him getting married so quickly, or getting into the relationship so fast. And if he has repeated that, which I'm sure he did, to Meghan Markle, then of course that will never be forgiven. And so these friends will be eliminated to some extent from his life. The one person who does seem to be still able to see him, which is very important, I think, is Princess Eugenie of York, his cousin, who seems to go over from time to time, and they seem to have a good relationship. So that's nice. But if he's going off with a whole lot of curated friends, hand chosen by Meghan Markle, he's not going to have a hugely exciting sort of boys away day, I wouldn't have thought, or boy weekend away, or whatever it is. I think we must assume that he was very excited to find Meghan Markle, and most of the time, I think they've been pretty united. Maybe they're not so united at this moment. The bond, of course, will be the children of whom he has spoken so affectionately. I'm sure that gives him enormous satisfaction and a purpose in life, to look after these small children growing up. I mean, they grow up so fast, as you know. Children, they grow up before your eyes, before you know where you are. They've left home. So, I'm hoping he enjoys every minute of the time that he has with them, bringing them up. I mean, there's a sadness there too, because of course they are going to grow up at a certain point and realize that they don't know their cousins, that they haven't been part of British life, which they could have been. I mean, if you were being brought up in California and suddenly discovered that, that your first cousin, was a future king of England, you might have wanted to spend some time with him. That might have been rather fun. So that's another issue they'll have to face in the fullness of time. Well, I remember hearing, because I know people who were around Windsor, how difficult she was when they were in Adelaide Cottage. And there was a time when she was incredibly rude to one of the sub gardeners, and the head gardener um, complained to the Queen about this. And the Queen drove down actually to Adelaide Cottage and ticked her off because you must not be rude to people who you're working for. And there does seem to be a lot of evidence that they can't keep staff and household and people. And that's a very, very bad sign because some people inspire huge loyalty. The late Prince Philip, for example, he had an archivist who joined him in 1953. And apart from a short break when she went away to have children, then she was widowed earlier, she came back to be his archivist. And she was with him for nearly 60 years, complete and total loyalty. And he inspired enormous loyalty from his staff. They all adored him. And they worked for him very well because, as he once said, my office is overworked and therefore they're happy. So he kept them busy. But, they respected that. I only use that as an example to show what is possible, but it's a bad sign if you can't inspire loyalty from your staff because your staff work very closely with you. And if you're sort of a difficult person, that will become clear, become evident and clear very early on, as it seems to have done because, one after another has left. So I think, yes, Dutch is difficult indeed. Well, I've always been concerned that it'll end badly for them because, and I'm sort of repeating what I've said over and over, really, which is if you, like the late Queen, you take the path of duty, it usually makes you very happy because, you're doing something for the general good. And if you seek a different route, as they have done, as indeed the Duke of Windsor did. I only saw the Duke of Windsor once in my life, and I've never seen a man with such sad eyes. I think neither the Duke of Windsor nor Prince Harry would admit that they were unhappy or that they would have made a different decision, and quite likely they'd have made the same decision all over again. But it doesn't look good because what they've gone into is a very, very hard, cutting edge, sharp world of highly commercial people. And unless you deliver the goods, it's not going to work. They're not going to be very well treated. And the more money that is being splashed around, the more people expect. So they have to keep delivering. That must be very pressurizing. So I have a feeling, at any rate, as far as Prince Harry is concerned, it's not going to end so well. I can't really say with Meghan Markle. She maybe has her own independent plans. I don't know. The reason that we are talking about them is because we're talking about Prince Harry, because he is a prince and we know him as a prince and we therefore interested in him. Meghan Markle was doing a lot of very good work before as an actress when she was doing work for the United Nations and she was going into African countries and as a lot of actresses doing humanitarian work and so forth. And she also addressed the United Nations. I mean, she had quite a sort of quite a strong profile, but nothing compared to the profile she got by marrying Prince Harry. That's my point. The point is that we're only talking about them because of Prince Harry. So at the moment, I think she obviously needs him, but there may come a time when she feels she can go off on her own, that she's created her own identity enough and that she can discard him. I mean, I don't want to say that, but that is always a possibility.